Chapter 3. "Miss, am I ever going to get my order?" the stodgy old woman snapped. She reached out and pinched Sue's pants to stop her. "Just as soon as the burger finishes frying. It takes at least 5 minutes, you know." She was holding up a stack of used plates in each hand. She stared down at the woman's liver-spotted hand that was still holding onto the fabric. "Do you mind?" she said through gritted teeth. "Your attitude will be reflected in your tip, young lady," the old woman said as she released her fingers. "Reflect this," Sue murmured as she made her way to the kitchen. She didn't care whether the woman heard her or not. She passed Michelle on the way. Michelle was holding up an oversized oval-shaped tray full of plates with food. "How you doing?" Michelle asked her in her chipper work voice. "Oh, just fucking peachy," Sue responded. Michelle stopped in her tracks and turned to watch Sue bump open the kitchen swinging door with her hip and disappear behind it, and then reappear and disappear and reappear and disappear for the last time as it finally finished swinging open and shut. Sue's comment felt off. It exuded anger and hurt, and her wake lingered. Michelle delivered the food and hurried back to meet her before Sue's tables preoccupied her. Michelle was too late. Sue was already loaded up and on her way to her customers by the time Michelle caught up to her. As she was passing by, Michelle said, "Hey, why don't we take a cigarette break after you dump that?" She motioned at the tray. "I'm not scheduled for a break for another hour," Sue said, defeated. "We'll sneak a quick one, okay?" Sue looked frazzled and didn't seem to want to add the stress of getting caught slacking on the clock to her already overloaded pile, but she said, "Yeah, okay," in an impatient tone. "Great, I'll meet you in the kitchen." Sue didn't reply. She just started on her path again that had been interrupted. One of the plates of food on her tray was a burger and fries that the old bitch in booth 8 had been waiting for all of 9 minutes by that point. She quickly relieved herself of the tray of items and headed for the kitchen. When Sue got to the kitchen, Michelle said, "Ready?" "No," Sue said sulkily. "The crone in booth 8 wants extra mayo. Her burger looks too dry." "Oh, that hag comes in every week and always complains about the food. If it's so bad, why does she keep coming back for more? She tries to piss you off, too, so she can say you were rude so she doesn't have to tip well. It's a scam. I tried once to jump through all the hoops she kept coming up with and smiled the whole time, but it didn't make any difference. She still tipped like 5%. I think it at least bothered her a little not to win that one. You never waited on her before?" Sue shook her head. "I'm surprised. She's in here a lot. I really should get back out there. Someone should tell her that this isn't McDonald's. I swear she thinks this is a fast food joint or something, but no, we actually have to cook the food here, flatten the patties ourselves and everything." "Yeah, well," Sue said as she held up the mini bowl she had squirted the mayonnaise into from the large jug with the pump nozzle. "Her Highness is waiting." "You mean Her Highness? Fuck her. Let her wait." "I can't." "Why not? She's not going to hardly tip you anyway." "But no buts. Come on, you look like you need a break." Michelle turned to Steve, who was the only person on the grill right then, and said, "Hey, Steve, we're going out back for a quick smoke. We'll be right back, but if Mike comes looking for us, tell him we're hitting the head." "I don't think that'll do it," Steve said. He was a Hispanic guy in his early 30s. He liked Michelle. She was always standing up for him and his food to the idiot managers. He didn't know much about her friend, though. She didn't talk much. "Trust me, that'll do it," Michelle said back. "Just tell him it's a feminine hygiene issue. He won't ask for details." Steve laughed. Sue piped up, "I should drop this off real quick. This lady is a complainer." "All the more reason to let her wait. Let's go already." Michelle was holding the back door open while she spoke. Sue looked thoughtfully at the little ball in her hand. She set it down. "You're right," she said. "Let her wait." She headed for the door. "There you go," Michelle encouraged. Together they stepped out into the dark alley behind the diner. Michelle picked up a small piece of wood, as she always did, and propped the door slightly open with it, so they would not get locked out and have to walk all the way back around to the front. They could bang on the door for Steve to let them in, but that would attract attention and might get him in trouble, too. Michelle was a bit of a rebel, but she usually only enjoyed getting herself into trouble. However, that night was different. She could tell that Sue needed to stop and take a breath for a few minutes. If they got caught, she would make sure to take all the blame. It was no big deal, really. Mike was an asshole, but John, who was really in charge and signed the checks, meager as they were since they mostly got paid in tips, was not just the boss who really got along with her, but he was also Mike's boyfriend. No one was supposed to know, but John had confided in her, and she could play a subtle card with Mike if she needed to. Michelle pulled a lighter and a pack of Marlboro Lights out of her apron's pocket. She lit one and took a deep drag before she handed it to Sue. Sue wasn't much of a smoker and could never finish an entire cigarette by herself. While Sue was taking her puff, Michelle said, "I'm not going to ask how you're doing because it's pretty obvious, and I don't suppose I have to ask what's wrong because I'm sure I already know, don't I?" Sue blew out a thick billow of blue-gray smoke and shrugged. "You want to talk some about it? I think you should. You're not functioning very well with all of this inside of you." Sue sighed and said, "I know. You're right. I just can't believe this. I'm just so... mad? Yeah, I'm mad. I shouldn't be, I guess. What do you mean you shouldn't be? He stole your car. Whatever his reasons may be, it's still a really shitty thing to do. Maybe. He might just be protecting us, though, which is why I feel so guilty about being so pissed. Well, Michelle started, but Sue just kept going. That was good. I mean, why wouldn't he think we could help? Why does he have to take off on his own? Being alone could get him killed. We'd all agreed on everything. I think he can take care of himself. He knows what steps to take. Oh, fuck the steps. We don't know exactly what really works or how or why. So you're pissed at him more for making you worry so much? Yes! Add another car to the guilt train. All a fucking bored. I know it's selfish, but goddamn it, so is he. Why can't he just make a simple phone call? She took another deep drag of the cigarette. Michelle didn't know what to say, but got the feeling that she really didn't need to say anything. What, does he just expect us to be able to nod off to sleep at night now? Sue's voice got quieter. I know he doesn't want anything to happen to us, and he thinks he's protecting us by distancing himself, but it's not fair. We're in this too. We're kind of a part of it now, and him just bailing doesn't help. Michelle had her own feelings and opinions about what was going on, and decided to probe Sue to see if she felt the same way. She asked, Does a part of you maybe resent him a bit for involving us? It's okay to— No. Never, she interrupted with a steady, full-throated tone. Michelle gulped with embarrassment and chased it with a shot of self-loathing. Sue's reaction had been more than gauged. Michelle would keep her feelings and thoughts to herself. Sue looked at the cigarette between her fingers. It was one puff away from being down to the filter. She gave it a disappointed expression and threw it on the ground and stepped on it, twisting the ball of her foot from side to side to put it out. The door to the alley swung open hard. Mike stood in the doorway. He was a tall, effeminate white man in his late 20s. His favorite topics of discussion were the Lakers and which hot chick he had fucked and how he had fucked her the previous night. Sue and Michelle, especially Michelle, knew that was just gross overcompensation, but the busboy seemed to eat it all right up. To them, he was the man. Apparently, from what John had leaked to Michelle, he was an aggressive bottom in bed. Well, well, ladies, he said smugly, what are we doing out here? Great, Sue said solemnly. Michelle piped right up. Well, I know what we're doing out here. As for you, I wouldn't begin to know. Right, he responded with a prissy smile. He was wearing a black tie with tiny black rhinestones embroidered on it. The job didn't require a tie, but he wore it anyway. I was coming out to see why the orders are backing up and why I'm 2 waitresses shy of a staff. Oh, please, Michelle said. There are only 5 people in there, and they've been served. We only took a couple minutes, and we were on our way back in. We have 7 customers in there now. Well, we'll get right on it. What were we going to work on today, Michelle? Me swallowing all my rage and pretending I give a rat's ass about all these people who so desperately need French fries in a pretentious atmosphere? She retorted cheerily. Your attitude. My attitude is fine. I'm the best waitress you've got, along with Sue. And upper management always gives me a glowing evaluation every 6 months. You want to know why? He didn't seem to. I'll tell you anyway, Mikey. She got right in front of him. It's because I'm great at pretending. I pretend this outfit doesn't make me feel butt ugly. I pretend to care when someone says their coffee is too hot or too cold, and I pretend that the measly check at the end of the week makes it all worthwhile. Mike huffed and looked at Sue. You might want to hang around with someone who is a better influence, he said to her. Sue gave him a wicked glare, and he flinched as she walked past him, almost into him, and back into the kitchen. Feeling emasculated, he stuck his chest out at Michelle and said, in his attempt at a manly voice, You better watch it. She smiled and said, You watch it. We're understaffed, and you don't want to lose your most experienced waitresses. When I mess up, which I promise you won't happen, then come talk to me. Until then, just don't. Well, I'll be writing your behavior up, and we'll see what the boys upstairs think. You do that. By the way, I told you that I'm great at pretending. How about you, Mike? I'll bet you're good at pretending, too. He looked uncomfortable and shaken, and said for Steve's benefit, who was in earshot, You just get back to work, Michelle. Steve pretended not to notice, and continued flipping 2 new patties. I'd already be out there if you hadn't been holding me up, she said to his back, as he walked to his small office behind the counter. Steve stopped flipping and looked at her. He winced and mouthed the word, sorry, to her. Oh, it's fine, I don't care. He's not going to do anything, she said. He smiled with relief and turned back to the sizzling meat. Sue walked up to booth number 8. The old lady had finished her meal and had left. Sue had already given her the bill, along with her food, as she had requested. The total came to $7.63. That was exactly how much had been left on the table, along with a note. It was written on scratch paper that was torn on all sides. It read simply, Rudeness has its price, young lady. Today it is your tip. Sue sighed and crumpled the note up. She put the wad of paper into her apron pocket. Michelle grabbed the new orders as soon as they were ready. The new customers had sat at one of her tables. She took a moment to stop and watch Sue. She watched her depressed posture, and watched her take the old woman's bill and cash over to the register to ring it up. Sue obviously had not been cheered up by their talk, but Michelle figured that it would all just have to run its course. She did notice, however, that Sue at least seemed more relaxed, or maybe the conversation had tired her out more. Regardless, her calmer mood was better for her, and would be more likely to help her keep her job than her previous state of dangerous anger. Michelle hated to see Sue like that, and hated her own feeling of helplessness to do anything about it, but she was at least a little less worried about her for the moment. Michelle knew herself to be an excellent waitress, but Sue was still relatively inexperienced, and had already made a few mistakes that day, and Michelle had sensed her readiness to bite anyone's head off, chew it up, and spit it out. She was surprised that Sue hadn't reamed the old lady out. She did not sense that anyone was in danger of Sue's wrath anymore, for that night at least. She ran over to Sue. "What you doing?" she asked her. "Just cashing the old cow's check," Sue sighed. Michelle snatched it from her hand. "It doesn't show a tip on here. How much did she leave?" Sue just raised one eyebrow at her. "Nothing? That's low, even for her. I just want to ring it up and get it over with." "Ring what up?" Michelle ripped up the check. Sue gasped and looked nervously around. "No one knows what we're talking about, and one burger will hardly be missed from inventory, which I count, by the way." She nudged Sue reassuringly. Sue smiled. "Yay! Now it's 100% tip. Time to retire." Sue's smile got bigger. They finished up their closing shifts and walked to their bus stop. All day long the buses usually came along about every 15 minutes, but after 8 at night they only came every hour. They only had about 35 minutes until the next bus was due to arrive. When they were home, they made some pasta and watched a little television. It had only been 2 nights since Rob had left, but they were back to sleeping separately in their own rooms. After they said their good nights, Sue went into the kitchen and began to clean the mountain of dirty dishes in the sink. Michelle had offered to help, but Sue was very insistent that she wanted to do it alone. Michelle lay awake listening to the clinking and clanking of the dishes being washed. It took Sue just over an hour to wash and dry and put everything away, and it did to her what she hoped it would do. It wiped her out. No matter how upset she was, she had no choice but to sleep. Her body would force her, and she wanted to surrender to it. It took her a few minutes, but she finally got comfortable lying on her left side. She felt like she was squashing her sad heart, and she cried a little before plunging into sleep.